into September, and we still have some lovely weather in Finland. So what I'm going to talk about today is the most famous, or what should be the most famous example of somebody who was persecuted for so-called hate speech. But before I get into that, a few comments first. The first one, I suppose you could sum up with the phrase, first, do no harm, which I think you could say it summarises the principle of natural law, that people should be free to do whatever they want to do, provided that it doesn't physically harm somebody else or remove their freedom. So if you think about so-called hate speech laws, they actually do compromise natural law. They do harm people because they steal. Hate speech laws steal free will to articulate your views and opinions. So by denying people freedom of expression, by stealing that, this is what hate speech laws do. They're compromising natural law. So at the moment in Britain, it's the state that's removed people's freedom of expression. Keir Starmer has done that, and before him Tony Blair. And controlling what people can and can't say is severely compromised people's freedom. So it's no exaggeration to say that Britain could not be described as a free country. Because if you can't even articulate ideas and opinions, then you're not a free person. So historically this has happened before. In communist Russia, people weren't allowed to express opinions that differed from the official state line. And that was obviously true of Nazi Germany as well. So when it comes to free speech, it's no exaggeration to say that what the current situation in Britain is absolutely no different from what existed under Hitler or Stalin, which is quite shocking if you think about it. So it's not just freedom obviously has a positive economic value. Humans were born free. Most of us enjoy being free, maybe. The counter argument to that being that there are some people in society who prefer a new leasehold BMW every 3 years over and above freedom of expression. They like safety, security. Maybe they would trade freedom of speech for a UBI. But the loss of freedom certainly means something to me as an individual. But it's more than that. In a society where you've lost freedom of speech and freedom of expression, as I said yesterday, society will stagnate because it's impossible for people to counter the existing status quo. So you're not going to get as much innovation. Society is just going to stagnate because bad ideas won't be challenged. Because it's forbidden to make those challenges, to make those criticisms of the status quo. In Britain in 2024, if you challenge the status quo, if you have anti-establishment ideas, then yeah, you're jailed, and that is no exaggeration. So what I'm going to talk about now is the original person that was persecuted for hate speech. So again, I'm going to reference a book that triggers people insanely. Whenever you mention this person's name, you will get some people who react with extreme hostility and anger. And what I want to ask those people who are watching this channel now is, before you click off, ask yourself why you're triggered so badly when you hear the name of Jesus Christ. Typically, these people also have very strong opinions on this book that I'm going to reference, called the Bible, even though they have never even glanced at it, let alone read any of it themselves. Again, you might want to think about how that's even possible. How can it be possible for somebody to have a really strong opinion about a book that they've never even read? Weird, eh? Is there something else going on here? Demonic possession, maybe? I don't know, but or I do know, or I suspect I know. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is start referencing particular sections from the Bible, and I'm going to use the English Standard Version, which is quite interesting, rather than the King James, because this was the English Standard Version was actually translated directly from the original Greek language documents of the Bible. So this is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23, and it says, Jesus then addressed the people and his disciples in these words. So these are the words of Jesus. The doctors of the law and the Pharisees were like the religious leaders of the day who sit in the chair of Moses. Therefore, do what they tell you, pay attention to their words, but do not follow their practice, for they say one thing and do another. Obviously, this is a great example now today. Nothing's changed with Justin Welby in the Church of England and the Catholic Church. Jesus continues, they make up heavy packs and pile them on men's shoulders, but will not raise a finger to lift the load themselves. Whatever they do is done for show. Again, I saw that a lot in the Church of England. They go about with broad phylacteries, I don't know what they are, and wear deep fringes on their robes. They like to have places of honour at feasts and the chief's seats in the synagogues, to be greeted respectfully in the street and to be addressed as rabbi. So what Jesus is describing there is kind of organised religion, and you can see that Jesus wasn't a fan of the status quo. He wasn't a fan of this man-made construct. But you must not be called rabbi, for you have one rabbi, and you are all brothers. Do not call any man on earth father, for you have one Father, and he is in heaven. Nor must you be called teacher. You have one teacher, the Messiah. The greatest amongst you must be your servant, for whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. So, two things there that Jesus is saying. The first one is, your job here is to serve one another. There's no one here on earth who's been born who is incapable of work. Your job, whilst you're here, is to serve other people. And you do that in the free market via voluntary, mutually beneficial exchange. That's what we're here for, using our talents in the service of others. And then, also another thing as well there in verse 12 is something that I remember growing up experiencing in Lancashire. The worst thing that you could ever do was big yourself up. Anyone who ever did that was quickly brought back down to earth again. And I believe that that's so. Alas, alas for you, lawyers and Pharisees, hypocrites that you are. You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in men's faces. You do not enter yourselves, and when others are entering, you stop them. Alas for you, lawyers and Pharisees, hypocrites. You travel over sea and land to win one convert, and when you have won him, you make him twice as fit for hell as you are yourselves. So Jesus continues. He really lays into the organised religion of his day, which was Judaism. Jesus himself was a Jew, but he was a critic of the corruption of the religion of Judaism. Saying nothing really has changed today. All the main religions have been corrupted. And if you want to understand, this is why when I say to people on my YouTube channel, like, if you're basing your knowledge of Christianity on Justin Welby or what the BBC says or what the Daily Telegraph says, then you're going to be misled, aren't you? This is why I say to you, you must go to the primary document yourself and read it and make your own mind up. But anyway, look, I could go on and read the rest of it, but I won't, because you've basically got the message here that Jesus, as far as the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the day were concerned, Jesus had badly disrespected them. He had said things that they didn't like, that they found insulting. Some might say, I'm sure they would have said, hateful. So what was their solution? They wanted to get rid of him. So it continues in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26. So Jesus was led off under arrest to the house of the high priest, where the lawyers and elders were assembled. Peter followed him at a distance till he came to the high priest's courtyard, and going in, he sat down there among the attendants, meaning to see the end of it all. The chief priests and the whole council tried to find some allegation against Jesus on which a death sentence could be based, but they failed to find one, though many came forward with false evidence. Finally, two men alleged that he had said, I can pull down the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 years. So again, this would be an example of Jesus being criminalized because of words that came out of his mouth that somebody else deemed to be hateful. At this, the high priest rose and said to him, have you no answer to the charge that these witnesses bring against you? But Jesus kept silence. The high priest then said, by the living God, I charge you to tell us, are you the Messiah, the Son of God? Jesus replied, the words are yours, but I tell you this, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of God and coming on the clouds of heaven. At these words, the high priest tore his robes and exclaimed, blasphemy. Need we call further witnesses? You have heard the blasphemy. What is your opinion? He is guilty. They answered, he should die. Then they spat in his face and beat him with their fists. And others said as they struck him, now Messiah, if you are a prophet, tell us who hit you. So again, Jesus, his crime here is hate speech. He said something that these Pharisees, the religious leaders of his day, found offensive. And for that crime, they assaulted him and planned to murder him. And guess who wants to introduce blasphemy laws in the UK? In fact, there already are blasphemy laws, because there's certain religions can be criticised in the UK, others can't be. I think there's been people already put in prison for leaving certain types of food outside a place of religious worship, and that on its own was enough for the state to imprison this person, and then this person got murdered in jail for the crime of leaving a food product outside a place of worship. Absolutely bonkers. But so this is, the Bible describes things that were happening 2,000 years ago. Jesus Christ was the first example of somebody who was murdered by the state, or more accurately, actually, still a centralized authority, but in this case it was like a theocracy, and for the crime of hate speech. So what conclusions can we draw? The idea of hate speech is very, very old, and it's basically you either have a choice. You either have hate speech laws, or you live in a free, humane, civilized society. So that's all I want to say today. So God bless.